The galaxy had watched in silence as the mighty Direcna Empire crumbled. For centuries, the Direcna had been one of the most powerful and respected species in the universe. They had built great cities and mastered advanced technology. But now, their empire was falling to the Korvac, a fierce and merciless alien race. The Korvac had destroyed many planets in their path, leaving only ashes behind. And now, the Direcna were next. For months, the Direcna sent out distress signals across the galaxy, hoping for help. They called to their allies, to any species willing to stand against the Korvac's overwhelming force. But no one answered. The galaxy watched, unsure of what to do. The Direcna were strong, but they had no chance against the Korvac's brutal attack. It seemed like the end of their people was inevitable. The message from the Direcna was clear and desperate. We are losing everything. Our people are dying. Please, we need help. For weeks, the distress call echoed through space, unanswered by any species. The Korvac ships darkened the skies above Direcna's last remaining cities as the Direcna desperately tried to hold their ground. The war was one-sided, with the Korvac taking no mercy. Entire cities were burned to the ground, and millions of lives were lost. The Direcna didn't expect any help to come. They had long considered humanity to be a primitive species, small and insignificant in the vastness of space. Earth was known across the galaxy, but it was thought of as a backwater planet filled with small, fragile creatures who had barely mastered space travel. The Direcna had no reason to believe that humans could offer any real help in their time of need. Still, they sent one final message, as a last hope. The message was different this time. It was shorter, but carried a heavy weight. Humanity, we beg you, please help us. The Korvac are unstoppable. We cannot survive without your aid. The message reached Earth, and it caused an immediate stir. Earth's leaders were not quick to act. They had their own struggles, their own concerns. They had no formal alliances with the Direcna, and they had no reason to risk their own lives for a species they barely knew. However, after much debate and discussion, something unexpected happened. A decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. While other species in the galaxy debated, waited, and watched from the sidelines, humanity made its move. Earth's leaders called upon their military, their scientists, and their engineers to prepare for a mission unlike any they had faced before. No one expected them to succeed, but the humans had something other species did not: a determination to fight, no matter the odds. The people of Earth, though small compared to the great empires of the galaxy, were united in their decision. They would send their ships, their soldiers, and their engineers to help the Direcna. Their mission was simple: to stop the Korvac and help the Direcna survive. As Earth's fleet began to assemble, it became clear that humanity's approach would be different from the other species in the galaxy. They didn't have the most advanced technology or the biggest fleets, but they had something far more powerful: ingenuity and a never-give-up attitude. Earth had faced countless challenges in its history, and each time, the people of Earth had found a way to overcome them. This time would be no different. While the rest of the galaxy looked on in disbelief, humanity's ships began to take flight. They weren't the most impressive sight in the galaxy. Their ships were small and made from materials that seemed outdated compared to the mighty Korvac warships. But what the humans lacked in size and advanced technology, they more than made up for in creativity and spirit. As the first human ships left Earth's orbit, they passed by the moon and then moved into deep space. The journey to the Direcna system would take several weeks, but humanity was determined. There was no turning back now. They were answering a call for help, one that no other species had responded to. Chancellor Arilla of the Direcna stood on the balcony of her palace, staring at the skies. The Korvac were closing in, and her people were being wiped out. The last hope she had was this: humanity. She didn't know if they would arrive in time. She didn't know if they could stop the Korvac. But for the first time in months, a tiny spark of hope flickered in her heart. The Direcna had always thought humanity too weak to make a difference, but as the human fleet neared their system, Chancellor Arilla found herself wondering, could these small, fragile creatures be the ones to save them? The galaxy had watched in silence as the mighty Direcna Empire crumbled. For centuries, the Direcna had been one of the most powerful and respected species in the universe. They had built great cities and mastered advanced technology. But now their empire was falling to the Korvac, a fierce and merciless alien race. The Korvac had destroyed many planets in their path, leaving only ashes behind. And now, the Direcna were next. For months, the Direcna sent out distress signals across the galaxy, hoping for help. They called to their allies, to any species willing to stand against the Korvac's overwhelming force. But no one answered. The galaxy watched, unsure of what to do. The Direcna were strong, but they had no chance against the Korvac's brutal attack. It seemed like the end of their people was inevitable. The message from the Direcna was clear and desperate. We are losing everything. Our people are dying. Please, we need help. For weeks, the distress call echoed through space, unanswered by any species. The Korvac ships darkened the skies above Direcna's last remaining cities as the Direcna desperately tried to hold their ground. The war was one-sided, with the Korvac taking no mercy. Entire cities were burned to the ground, and millions of lives were lost. The Direcna didn't expect any help to come. They had long considered humanity to be a primitive species, small and insignificant in the vastness of space. Earth was known across the galaxy, but it was thought of as a backwater planet filled with small, fragile creatures who had barely mastered space travel. The Direcna had no reason to believe that humans could offer any real help in their time of need. Still, they sent one final message, as a last hope. The message was different this time. It was shorter, but carried a heavy weight. Humanity, we beg you, please help us. The Korvac are unstoppable. We cannot survive without your aid. The message reached Earth, and it caused an immediate stir. Earth's leaders were not quick to act. They had their own struggles, their own concerns. They had no formal alliances with the Direcna, and they had no reason to risk their own lives for a species they barely knew. However, after much debate and discussion, something unexpected happened. A decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. While other species in the galaxy debated, waited, and watched from the sidelines, humanity made its move. Earth's leaders called upon their military, their scientists, and their engineers to prepare for a mission unlike any they have faced before. No one expected them to succeed, but the humans had something other species did not: a determination to fight, no matter the odds. The people of Earth, though small compared to the great empires of the galaxy, were united in their decision. They would send their ships, their soldiers, and their engineers to help the Direcna. Their mission was simple: to stop the Korvac and help the Direcna survive. As Earth's fleet began to assemble, it became clear that humanity's approach would be different from the other species in the galaxy. They didn't have the most advanced technology or the biggest fleets, but they had something far more powerful: ingenuity and a never-give-up attitude. Earth had faced countless challenges in its history, and each time, the people of Earth had found a way to overcome them. This time would be no different. While the rest of the galaxy looked on in disbelief, humanity's ships began to take flight. They weren't the most impressive sight in the galaxy. Their ships were small and made from materials that seemed outdated compared to the mighty Korvac warships. But what the humans lacked in size and advanced technology, they more than made up for in creativity and spirit. As the first human ships left Earth's orbit, they passed by the moon and then moved into deep space. The journey to the Direcna system would take several weeks, but humanity was determined. There was no turning back now. They were answering a call for help, one that no other species had responded to. Chancellor Arilla of the Direcna stood on the balcony of her palace, staring at the skies. The Korvac were closing in, and her people were being wiped out. The last hope she had was this: humanity. She didn't know if they would arrive in time. She didn't know if they could stop the Korvac. But for the first time in months, a tiny spark of hope flickered in her heart. The Direcna had always thought humanity too weak to make a difference. But as the human fleet neared their system, Chancellor Arilla found herself wondering, could these small, fragile creatures be the ones to save them? The humans were coming, and whether the Direcna were ready or not, a new chapter in the war had just begun. The Direcna system was on the brink of collapse. With the Korvac fleet hovering ominously above, it seemed like nothing could stop their march toward destruction. The Direcna, who had once ruled with great pride and power, now faced their greatest challenge. As their cities burned, their people ran in fear. Hope was a distant memory, and only despair remained. But then, something unexpected happened. Humanity arrived. The first human ships, small compared to the mighty Korvac warships, emerged from the depths of space. The Direcna had been receiving their distress signals for weeks, but they never expected anything to come of it. They thought humanity would never make it in time, or worse, that they wouldn't even try. Yet, here they were, human vessels slowly approaching the Direcna's dying world. From the command center, Chancellor Arilla stared at the incoming fleet. Her heart skipped a beat. The ships were unlike anything she had seen before. They were not as sleek and polished as the Korvac ships, but there was something different about them. The humans had arrived. Whether it was a miracle or a last-ditch effort, they were here. The humans, despite their smaller size and less advanced technology, approached the system with a confident determination. The Direcna watched as the ships entered their orbit, a strange feeling rising within them. Was it hope, or was it simply curiosity? On Earth, humanity's leaders had made a difficult decision to commit to this battle. The human fleet wasn't a grand display of advanced weaponry. Instead, it was filled with ships crafted from years of struggle and innovation. They had to make do with what they had, and they had built their fleet from their resourcefulness. The Korvac might have their powerful warships, but humanity was bringing something else to the table: their unwavering resolve. Commander Alex Harper stood aboard the flagship, indomitable, watching as their fleet neared the Direcna's homeworld. The mission had been long and difficult, but it was finally time to make their move. He had been in charge of many missions throughout his career, but this one was different. The stakes were higher, and the pressure was immense. There was no turning back now. "We're almost there," Commander reported Lieutenant Garcia from the navigation deck. Alex nodded, though his mind was heavy with the responsibility. There was no guarantee they would succeed, but humanity had always found a way to fight back against the odds. "Prepare for orbital insertion," Alex ordered. "We're going to help them, one way or another." As the human ships began to enter the Direcna's orbit, the fleet's first objective was clear: secure a landing zone. They didn't have the luxury of advanced energy shields like the Korvac, but they had something far more valuable: their ingenuity. They had trained for every possible scenario, prepared for every kind of battle. The Direcna, who had expected the Korvac to deliver the final blow, were now caught in a strange moment of confusion. What kind of force was this? The humans had no grand fleet, no overwhelming firepower. Yet there they were, pushing through the Korvac's blockade with the determination of a species that refused to accept defeat. Arilla watched as the first human transports descended through the smoke-filled skies of her homeworld. The ground shook as the ships touched down, their massive engines creating gusts of wind that sent dust and debris swirling into the air. But it wasn't the ships or the noise that impressed her. It was the sight of the soldiers who emerged. They were human, but they were unlike any soldiers she had ever seen before. They moved with purpose, without hesitation. They weren't just fighters. They were saviors. They helped Direcna citizens, carried them to safety, and worked together in a way that seemed almost impossible. These humans, with their small, unremarkable bodies, showed a level of coordination and strength that the Direcna had not seen before. "Stay alert," Commander Harper spoke into his communicator. "We're not here to be heroes. We're here to win this fight." The human soldiers swiftly set up defensive positions and prepared for any incoming Korvek attacks. Though their ships had limited firepower, their tactics were quick and precise. They knew they had no time to waste. Every minute was precious. In a matter of hours, human engineers were already at work repairing Direkna infrastructure. The Korvek had destroyed so much, but the humans were determined to rebuild. They used their advanced technology to restore energy systems, secure communications, and fortify the defenses that had fallen. It was a race against time, but humanity was committed to helping the Direkna stand tall again. As the day went on, the Direkna began to realize something they had never considered. Humanity wasn't there to conquer or dominate. They weren't interested in taking control or claiming victory for themselves. They had come to fight alongside the Direkna, not to rule them. This realization spread across the Direkna ranks. For the first time in weeks, they could see a future that didn't end in destruction. The humans weren't just saving them. They were showing them what it meant to fight for each other, to protect what was good, and to never give up. Arilla stood on a balcony, watching the humans work. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. The humans had arrived, against all odds. And in doing so, they had given the Direkna something they had almost lost: hope. But the battle was far from over. The Korvek were still out there, and they would stop at nothing to crush the resistance. The Direkna and humans had only just begun their fight, but for the first time, they were not fighting alone. The humans had arrived, but their work had only just begun. The Korvek fleet was still lurking in the shadows of the Direkna system, waiting for the right moment to strike. Though humanity's arrival had given the Direkna a renewed sense of hope, the situation was far from safe. The Korvek would not retreat easily, and they had their eyes set on wiping out both the Direkna and the humans. Commander Alex Harper stood in the command center of the Indomitable, gazing at the tactical display. The Korvek ships, large and menacing, were still in orbit, preparing for their next move. He knew the Korvek's reputation for cruelty and strength, but humanity had a different kind of strength. It was something the Korvek had yet to understand. "We have about 6 hours before the Korvek are within striking range," Alex said, turning to his team. "We need to fortify our positions and make sure the Direkna are ready. This is their fight now, but we're not going anywhere." His words carried weight, and the humans didn't hesitate. They had trained for moments like this, where the odds were stacked against them, where survival was uncertain. They knew what had to be done, and they would do it, together. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Direkna were rallying around the humans. Chancellor Arilla had organized a council with the Direkna military leaders, who had once seen humanity as insignificant. Now, they saw them as allies, as the first real hope they had had in months. They had seen the humans fight alongside them, side by side, without hesitation. The trust between the two species was growing, but time was running out. Arilla stood before her people, her voice steady despite the uncertainty surrounding them. "The humans have given us a chance to survive," she said, her eyes scanning the faces of the Direkna. "We must stand strong now. Together, we will fight, not just for our survival, but for the future of our people." The Direkna nodded in agreement. They had fought for centuries, but they had never fought alongside another species like this. The humans were different, and Arilla couldn't help but feel a growing sense of respect for them. They weren't just soldiers, they were fighters, like the Direkna themselves. On the battlefield, the humans and Direkna worked together to prepare for the inevitable assault. The Direkna had their advanced weapons and shields, but the humans brought something new, a fresh perspective. They used their knowledge of guerrilla tactics, their ability to adapt to any situation, and their strength in numbers to create defenses that the Korvek had never seen before. "We need to place the energy shields here," Alex ordered, pointing to a map of the planet's surface. "If we can block the Korvek's main assault, we can buy time for the Direkna to regroup. The Korvek are powerful, but they're not invincible. We just have to be smarter than they are." The human engineers worked tirelessly to set up barriers and traps around the city. They planted mines, rigged communication systems to send false signals, and reinforced the city's infrastructure. The Direcna watched in awe as the humans moved with purpose, quickly and efficiently creating a defense system that would give them the upper hand. "We've only got one shot at this," Alex said, rallying his team. "We fight, we hold, and we don't back down." The Korvac fleet, now just hours away, seemed to grow larger with every passing minute. The humans and Direcna were ready, but would it be enough? The Korvac were ruthless, and their ships were formidable. But they had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated the power of cooperation and determination. As the first Korvac ships descended from the clouds, Alex's heart raced. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment. The battle was about to begin, and there was no turning back. "We're in position," Lieutenant Garcia reported from the tactical console. "The Korvac are coming in hot." The humans and Direcna stood side by side, their weapons ready, their minds focused. It was now or never. The Korvac would either destroy them, or they would face the hardest fight of their lives. The first Korvac ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the sky. The humans returned fire with everything they had, their smaller ships darting through the air with agility and precision. The Direcna's powerful weapons joined the fray, creating a deadly barrage that shook the ground beneath them. The battle had begun. Despite the Korvac's overwhelming firepower, the humans and Direcna fought back with everything they had. The human tactics were unpredictable, their movements quick and sharp. They didn't fight like the Korvac. They fought like survivors, and that made all the difference. In the chaos of the battle, Irilla watched the humans in action. She had seen many species in her life, but none fought with such spirit. They fought as though they had nothing to lose, and that was the greatest weapon of all. The Direcna had their strength, their advanced technology, but the humans had heart. As the hours passed, the Korvac began to retreat. It wasn't a total victory, but it was enough to buy time. The Direcna had held their ground, and humanity had shown them that even in the face of overwhelming odds, victory was still possible. The rising storm was not over, but for the first time in weeks, the Direcna could see the light at the end of the tunnel. The battle had raged for hours, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and smoke. The Korvac fleet had retreated, but it wasn't a victory. It was a brief pause, a moment to regroup. Commander Alex Harper knew that this was far from over. The Korvac had been forced to withdraw, but they would return, stronger than ever. The fight for the survival of the Direcna and humanity had just begun. On the surface, the Direcna were gathering their forces, rebuilding what they could. The damage to their cities was severe, but humanity had given them a fighting chance. The Direcna had never seen humans fight like this, resilient, resourceful, and unwavering. It wasn't just their technology that impressed the Direcna. It was their spirit. Irilla stood among the Direcna soldiers, observing their progress. The humans had shown them how to create defensive positions, how to use the terrain to their advantage, and how to remain calm in the face of chaos. The Direcna were strong, but now they were learning to fight smarter. They were becoming better because of the humans, and for the first time in a long time, they felt like they might win. "I never thought we would get this far," Irilla said to one of her generals, Captain Torak. "The humans have given us hope. I only hope we can live up to their expectations." Torak, a seasoned veteran of countless battles, nodded. "They believe in us, Chancellor. We cannot let them down." Irilla's heart swelled with pride. She had seen the Direcna as a proud, unyielding people, but now she saw them with new eyes. They were capable of so much more than they had ever believed, and the humans had helped them unlock that potential. Back at the Human Command Center, Alex paced in front of the large holographic map of the Direcna system. His mind raced, trying to plan the next move. The Korvac would not be gone for long. They had retreated, but they would return in full force. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. "Commander, we've received new intel from our scouts," Lieutenant Garcia said, breaking the silence. "The Korvek are regrouping. They've sent a message, something about reinforcing their forces at a nearby station. We don't know what they're planning, but they're definitely not backing down." Alex's brow furrowed. The Korvek weren't just a threat. They were a danger to everyone in this galaxy. They had no mercy, no hesitation. If they returned with reinforcements, the situation would become even more desperate. "We need to strike first," Alex said, his voice steady but firm. "If we wait, they'll have the upper hand. We can't let them build up strength. We hit them hard now, before they can regroup." His decision was met with silence. Everyone in the room understood the gravity of the situation. It was risky, but it was the only option. If they didn't act quickly, the Korvek would crush them. "Prepare the fleet," Alex ordered. "We're going after their reinforcement station." At that moment, Irilla entered the command center, her expression tense but determined. She had been informed of the plan and had come to offer the directness support. "Commander Harper," she said, addressing Alex directly, "we want to fight alongside you. Our people will not sit idly by while the humans risk their lives. We stand with you." Alex turned to face her, his gaze meeting hers. He could see the fire in her eyes. The Direcna were no longer just survivors. They were fighters. They were allies. "We're honored to have you with us, Chancellor," Alex replied. "But this mission is dangerous. We may not come back from this." "We know the risks," Irilla said, her voice unwavering. "But we're not afraid. We've seen what you're capable of. Now, let's show the Korvek what we are capable of." The room fell silent for a moment, as everyone present felt the weight of her words. They were about to face an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. But together, humans and Direcna had the strength to win. The plan was set into motion. The human fleet, reinforced by the Direcna forces, made their way toward the Korvek station. The journey was long, but the resolve of both species was unwavering. The Direcna fought for their future, while the humans fought for a chance to help those who had no other option. The Korvek station loomed ahead as they neared their target. It was heavily guarded, but the humans had something the Korvek didn't: an ability to improvise. They had studied the Korvek tactics, and now they were ready to strike with precision. As the human ships neared the station, Alex's voice crackled over the communication channel. "This is it. We hit them hard and fast. No hesitation. We strike together." Irilla's voice followed, firm and confident. "The Direcna are ready, Commander. We will fight as one." The Korvek would soon learn that they had underestimated humanity and the strength of their allies. The battle would not be easy, but with the combined might of humans and Direcna, they would push back the darkness that threatened to consume them. Together, they would fight for their future. And this time, they would not lose. The plan was simple, but the stakes were high. As the combined fleet of humans and Direcna closed in on the Korvek reinforcement station, tension filled the air. Every crew member aboard the ships, whether human or Direcna, knew that they were about to face the greatest challenge of their lives. This was their chance to hit the Korvek before they could grow stronger, but it could also be their last chance to win the war. The odds were stacked against them, but they were determined to fight. Commander Alex Harper stood at the front of the command center aboard the Indomitable. His gaze was fixed on the tactical map, his fingers tracing the course they would take. "We hit them from all sides," he said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "We use the Directness firepower and our speed to overwhelm them. We don't give them a chance to regroup." Lieutenant Garcia nodded from the operations console. "Coordinates are locked in, Commander. The fleet is ready for deployment." Alex looked around at his crew and then at the Direcna officers who had joined them. Chancellor Irilla stood beside him, her eyes steely with determination. The Direcna had proven themselves time and again in this fight, but now They were about to face the full wrath of the Korvik. He could see the resolve in her eyes. She wasn't just leading her people, she was leading humanity's allies too. Everyone knows their roles, Alex said, his voice carrying authority. Stay sharp, stay coordinated, and above all, stay together. We have one shot at this. The fleet entered the outer orbit of the Korvik station. It was a massive structure, covered in layers of armor and weapons that could wipe out entire fleets. But despite its power, it had a weakness. Its shield generators were vulnerable, and if they could disable those, the station would be defenseless. The Korvik had no idea that the humans and Direcna had already devised a plan to exploit this weakness. Alex and Arilla exchanged one last look before the battle began. "Ready?" Alex asked. "We've come this far," Arilla replied. "There is no turning back." With a deep breath, Alex gave the signal. "All ships, engage." The battle erupted as the fleet moved in. The human ships, agile and quick, darted in and out of the Korvik's defenses. The Direcna's massive warships pounded the Korvik's outer defenses with powerful energy blasts. The Korvik retaliated with all their might, but they were unprepared for the ferocity and coordination of the human and Direcna forces. The sky lit up with explosions as laser fire filled the void of space. Alex's heart pounded as the Indomitable surged forward, weaving between enemy fire. "Focus on the shield generators," he ordered. The shields were the key to everything. If they could disable them, the station would be vulnerable to a full-on attack. Lieutenant Garcia's voice crackled through the comms. "Targeting the first generator. We've got a clear shot." "Take it," Alex barked. The Indomitable fired, sending a concentrated burst of energy directly at the shield generator. It exploded in a burst of sparks, and the shields around the station flickered. Alex smiled, but there was no time to celebrate. The Korvik were already regrouping, sending out reinforcements from hidden bays within the station. "More ships incoming," Garcia warned. "They've called for backup." "Prepare for a full assault," Alex ordered. "We'll need to hold them off long enough to finish the job." The battle grew fiercer as the Korvik responded with overwhelming force. But the combined might of humanity and the Direcna was proving to be a formidable force. The Direcna's warships fired powerful blasts, knocking the Korvik off course and forcing them to regroup. Meanwhile, the human ships darted around the battlefield, cutting through the Korvik lines with expert precision. Arilla stood beside Alex, watching the battle unfold. "We cannot let them break through," she said, her voice steadied despite the chaos around them. "I know," Alex replied. "We've come too far to lose now." As the minutes ticked by, the tide began to turn in their favor. The Korvik's defensive systems were weakening, and their ships were being taken out one by one. The humans and Direcna pressed on, relentless in their assault. With each passing second, the Korvik's chances of victory diminished. "Shield generators are down," Garcia reported. "We've got a clear shot at the heart of the station." "Take it," Alex said without hesitation. "This is it." The Indomitable fired once more, and this time, the blast tore through the heart of the Korvik station. The entire structure shuddered as the central core exploded in a massive burst of energy. The shockwave rippled through the battlefield, pushing back any remaining Korvik ships. Alex's hands tightened around the controls as he watched the explosion from the viewport. The Korvik were finished, at least for now, but there was no time for relief. The fleet had to regroup, and the victory had come at a heavy cost. There were damaged ships and injured soldiers, and the battle had taken its toll on everyone involved. "We've done it," Arilla said, her voice filled with awe. "We've defeated them." Alex nodded, but his thoughts were already on the next steps. This battle had been a huge victory, but the war was far from over. "We've won today," he said, "but we still have to rebuild, and we still have to keep fighting. The Korvik may be down, but they're not out." The storm had passed, but the war was still raging, and as long as there was breath in their bodies, humanity and the Direcna would fight together, united in their resolve. They had survived this battle, but they knew there were more storms ahead, and they would face them together. The aftermath of the battle left the void of space quiet, save for the faint hum of damaged ships and the distant glow of dying stars. The Korvek station, once a symbol of their overwhelming strength, now lay in ruins, its twisted remains scattered across the debris field. The humans and Direcna had succeeded in their mission, but the cost had been high. Many lives had been lost in the heat of the conflict, and the once proud fleet was now left limping back to their makeshift base, battered and weary. Commander Alex Harper stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his eyes focused on the distant stars. The battle was over, but the weight of their losses hung heavy in the air. He could feel it in the quiet. The celebrations had been brief, and now the silence was deafening. They had won, but at what cost? "Commander," Lieutenant Garcia's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We've assessed the damage. The fleet took heavy losses. The Vanguard and the Ardent both sustained critical damage. We'll need time for repairs." Alex nodded but didn't speak. He knew what that meant. Time was something they didn't have. The Korvek weren't gone. They were only retreating. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would return. But for now, the humans and Direcna needed to rebuild too. They needed time, and they needed strength. "Any word from the Direcna?" Alex asked, finally turning his gaze from the stars to the tactical map on the wall. He saw the green blips that indicated the positions of their allied ships. But it wasn't enough. He needed more. Erilla, standing at the edge of the command center, walked forward, her expression somber. "The Direcna are ready to aid in repairs, Commander, but many of our own are injured too. We cannot afford to ignore their needs while we rebuild." Alex exhaled slowly. He had known that this mission would take a toll on both species, but seeing it firsthand, the tired eyes of his crew, the wounded soldiers on the Direcna ships, it hurt more than he could have imagined. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to maintain the dignity of all those who had risked their lives. "We'll make it work," Alex said, his voice low but resolute. "We'll take care of our people first. Then we'll focus on repairs. But we have to stay sharp. The Korvek won't give up so easily." Erilla nodded. "Our people have seen what the humans are capable of. They trust you, Commander, and they trust your leadership. Together, we can rebuild." Alex gave her a small, grateful smile. Erilla had been the Direcna's guiding light through the darkness, but now she stood as a beacon of hope for all. She had believed in humanity from the start, and now it was time for the humans to show the Direcna that their trust was not misplaced. As the repair teams worked tirelessly on the fleet, Alex had a moment of peace. He walked outside to the observation deck, where the stars shone brightly, and the silence of space calmed his racing thoughts. There was still so much to do, so many decisions to be made. But for a brief moment, he allowed himself to reflect on the progress they had made. The Direcna were stronger now. They had learned from the humans. They had fought side by side, and they had tasted victory. That was something no one could take away from them. But Alex knew it wasn't over. The Korvek would return. They always did. As the days passed, the combined fleet made repairs, and their strength was restored, piece by piece. Yet, despite the progress, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that lingered in the air. Every time he looked out at the stars, he wondered if it would be the last time. The Korvek were a relentless force, and they were not the kind to forget a defeat. Erilla joined him on the observation deck, her footsteps light but deliberate. She, too, had been reflecting on the same thoughts. She stood beside him, her gaze following the same distant stars. "We've done what we could," she said quietly. "We've shown them that we can stand together. But the question remains, can we keep standing?" Alex turned to face her, his expression serious. "We will keep standing. We don't have a choice. If we don't stand, we fall. And I'm not willing to fall." Erilla looked at him, her eyes filled with both respect and concern. Then we fight. But we must prepare for what comes next. Alex nodded. We will. Together. The war was far from over, and Alex knew that the real test had only just begun. They had beaten the Korvac in one battle, but the Korvac were persistent. They were not just enemies, they were a force of nature. But humanity had proven they could adapt, they could fight, and they could stand strong in the face of any challenge. As the days turned into weeks, the fleet continued to recover. The Direcna and humans worked side by side, sharing resources, knowledge, and expertise. There was a growing bond between the two species, one built not just on the battlefield, but on mutual respect and shared determination. But even as they prepared for the next battle, the quiet reminders of what they had already lost weighed heavily on their minds. The cost of victory was high, but the cost of losing was even higher. Together, humans and Direcna would face whatever came next. They had no other choice but to stand and to fight for their future and for the future of all who depended on them. The fleet was finally ready. After weeks of tireless work, repairs had been completed. The human and Direcna ships were once again in working order, their weapons recharged, and their engines humming with the promise of a new day. However, despite the repairs, the tension in the air was thick. They had won a significant battle, but the war was far from over. Commander Alex Harper stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the tactical map in front of him. He could feel the weight of the decisions ahead. The Korvac weren't just a threat to the humans. They were a threat to all sentient life. And if they were to truly defeat them, humanity would need to continue to stand united, not just with the Direcna, but with every species willing to join the fight. Commander, we've received the message from the Orc Federation. Lieutenant Garcia's voice cut through Alex's thoughts. They're ready to join us in the next phase of the battle. Alex's heart raced at the news. The Orcs were known for their technological superiority and vast resources. With their help, they could make a significant dent in the Korvac's ability to wage war. But he knew this would come at a price. The Orcs did not give their loyalty freely. They would demand something in return. Prepare a response, Lieutenant, Alex said with a sense of urgency. Let them know we're willing to cooperate. But we need assurances. This alliance can't just be one-sided. The decision to reach out to the Orcs had not been an easy one. Alex had always known that humanity could only go so far alone. The Korvac's vast empire stretched across several systems, and no one species could take them down by themselves. But the cost of trust, of relying on another species, was something that weighed heavily on his mind. Meanwhile, Irilla, the Direcna leader, was already on her way to the Indomitable to meet with Alex. Their alliance had already been solidified through their shared battles, but the involvement of the Orc added a new layer of complexity. She entered the bridge with her usual grace, her keen eyes scanning the room before focusing on Alex. Are we ready for the next phase? Irilla asked, her voice steady, though there was an edge of uncertainty behind her calm demeanor. Alex nodded. We have the Orc on our side now. They'll bring resources, weapons, and troops, but they'll want something in return. I don't know what yet, but we'll need to be prepared. Irilla seemed to consider this for a moment before speaking again. The Korvac will not be easy to defeat, but we have seen their weaknesses. We know where they are vulnerable. Together, we can exploit those weaknesses and ensure that their reign ends. Alex met her gaze, sensing the weight of her words. The Direcna had faced their own battles, their own hardships, but their spirit had not broken. Irilla had fought beside him in the trenches, and in that time, she had come to trust humanity. And Alex in particular, like no other. We'll do this, Irilla, Alex said with a determined look. But we'll need everyone. Every ally we can get, and every weapon we have. No one can afford to sit on the sidelines anymore. Irilla placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice unwavering. You have my people, Commander. Together, we will see this through. The message from the Orc had come through, confirming their willingness to join the fight. As Alex read through their response, he realized that the Orlok were not offering their assistance out of charity. They had their own reasons for wanting the Korvek defeated, reasons that were intertwined with their own survival. But in the end, their motivations didn't matter. What mattered was that they were united by a common goal: to destroy the Korvek. With the Orlok on board, the next phase of the battle would be their most challenging yet. They would have to move quickly, hitting the Korvek where they were least prepared. The Korvek had already retreated to regroup, but they wouldn't remain in hiding for long. The war was far from over. Days later, the combined fleet of humans, Direcna, and Orlok emerged from hyperspace, poised to strike. The Korvek were not expecting this alliance, and Alex knew that this could be their best shot at winning the war. Their first target was a Korvek stronghold, a massive space station that had been producing weapons and soldiers for their endless war. Taking it down would not only cripple their military strength, but it would send a message that the alliance was a force to be reckoned with. Prepare for battle, Alex ordered as the fleet gathered at the edge of the system. We strike now, for everyone who's fallen, for every life we've lost, and for the future we're fighting for. The fleet surged forward, weapons locked and ready. As they approached the Korvek stronghold, the tension in the air was palpable. This would be the turning point in the war. The alliance had come a long way, but it wasn't over yet. There would be sacrifices, there would be losses, but they had one thing the Korvek could never take away: the resolve to fight for their freedom. The first shots were fired, and the battle raged in the darkness of space. But no matter how fierce the Korvek fought, the humans and their allies were united, stronger than ever before. The war was not over, but this was humanity's moment. This was their time to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. And as the combined fleet tore into the heart of the Korvek Empire, Alex knew that the dawn of a new alliance had arrived. The battle for freedom had begun, and humanity was ready to lead the charge.